This is how the future looked to people in the early part of the century. It's a world completely transformed by technology. Here, complex machines create a society in which all problems have been solved. Anything and everything is possible, including things that defy logic. Every family has its own flying machine that's as easy to drive as a car. Energy is free and unlimited. No more annoying electrical bills. And modern medicine routinely works miracles if you aren't prone to motion sickness. You can work just a few hours a week if you want to, and leave the rest to machines. None of this seems all that far-fetched in the early part of the century. People believed deeply in the idea of steady progress and assume it will go on forever. But as the century unfolds, what actually occurs is much more surprising and extraordinary. The story of 20th century technology proves to be as contradictory, ironic, and unpredictable as we are. There's no better place to begin this part of our Odyssey than at home. The year is 1900, and a lot of things are different, especially the technology. Take a look around. Fresh food is kept cool in the ice box, as long as there's a block of ice in there with it. Although some prosperous houses nearby are electrified, the light here comes from gas and kerosene lamps. Rich folks have running water and toilets, but most working people wash with a pitcher and a bowl, use an outhouse in the back. To take a bath, you have to pump enough water by hand and then heat it on a coal or wood-burning stove. It's a big job, so members of the family take turns in the tub on Saturday night. There's no telephone to get the latest news, but there is one at the general store, along with the daily paper. Full of incredible stories about new inventions. Why, there's even a story here about two brothers who say they've built a flying machine, if you can imagine that. One of the most exciting technologies at the turn of the century is the airplane. Orville and Wilbur Wright of Dayton, Ohio, become the first to leave Earth in this heavier-than-air machine in 1903. But not many people get to see it. The brothers then work hard to improve their invention. And the more successful they are, the more secretive they become. The new field of flight technology is already highly competitive, and someone might copy their design. Out west, the first chance folks have to see an airplane is in 1910. That's when an international air meet is held in the up-and-coming city of Los Angeles.
The meet was ballyhooed all over. Posters, signs, special trains from downtown Los Angeles out here to the aviation field, they called it. The stands held 30,000 people. They were really an optimistic group planning this.
By noon, the stands are nearly full. One of the top attractions is Glenn Curtis, a roughneck motorcycle racer with a gift for designing fast machines. Curtis is the first American to fly after the Wrights.
and holds the airspeed record, a blistering 48.5 miles per hour.
The first plane taken off was Curtis himself on the opening day. The crowd was silent, watching the engine rev up. There were those who doubted that this could even happen. And then watch it taxi and take off. And they let out a cheer. They were just, it's going, it's happening in front of us. Look at that as they watched the plane. And strangers shook hands with one another because they were actually witnessing men free from the earth at last.
But the show is far from over. A French circus performer turned pilot named Louis Paulin is determined to uphold the honor of France. Unannounced and out of nowhere, Paulin buzzes the grandstand. The crowd is stunned, then stands and cheers as he makes a short turn around the countryside. Over the course of 11 days, Paulin and Curtis compete fiercely for over $50,000 in prize money. The American is first in speed, but it's the Frenchman who wins the most.
Paulin went up, no parachute, 4,100 feet. Boy, that was something. And then Paulin also took the long-distance record. He flew from here to the Santa Anita racetrack and back, 45 miles.
Paulin's success is but the latest round in an escalating competition among flyers, airplane designers, and even nations. The competition will shape the development of aviation. For years, it's been France that has seen itself as the undisputed leader in the field. After all, the French have been experimenting with flight for more than a century. It was naturally assumed that the first successful airplane would be built by a Frenchman, not two upstart Americans like the Wright brothers.
Along comes news dribbling in from America about these two guys experimenting out in Dayton, Ohio. And it sounds as though if these stories are true, these guys have really moved well beyond anybody else. And it's knowledge that the Wright brothers are out there working and achieving success really lights a fire under the French aeronautical community.
In 1906, Alberto Santos Dumont managed a brief flight. His aircraft was inspired by accounts of the Wrights' machine. The brothers had declined any public demonstrations until their patents were secured. So Parisians were convinced they had just witnessed the world's first airplane flight. It wasn't until 1908 that the Wrights finally revealed their creation. For the plane's first flight abroad, Wilbur Wright brought it to France.
And they are stunned that they're flying for more than 2 hours. And no one in Europe is flying for any more than a few minutes or half an hour. That is a rude shock in 1908 to be outdone so dramatically in Europe.
Wilbur Wright took Paris by storm. His invention was painted by artists and scrutinized by airplane designers. Europeans had focused on getting a plane off the ground. The genius of the Wright's machine is its mobility in the air. Through a system of wires and pulleys, the wings are warped or bent in such a way that the aircraft can respond to air currents and maneuver in any direction. Despite the Wrights' patents, wing warping is rapidly adopted by the French. Political tensions growing in Europe are making technological innovations increasingly valuable.
The Europeans had to worry about their neighbors. They didn't know what value this new thing, the airplane, was going to have. But they did know, if they were French, that the Germans were fiddling around with Zeppelins and airplanes and so on over here. And by George, we better keep up with what they're doing.
In America, the incentives to improve airplane technology are fewer, but growing. Sometimes, all it takes is a promotional gimmick. To build circulation, newspaper baron William Randolph Hearst offers a $50,000 prize for the first coast-to-coast crossing of America in less than 30 days. Among those who join the competition is Calbraith Perry Rogers. He'll fly a Wright machine christened the Vin Fizz Flyer, after a soft drink made by his sponsor. Rogers is the descendant of a long line of naval heroes, but a childhood disease has left him deaf and unable to follow in their footsteps. With the airplane, he's found something even better for his boundless energy. Standing 6'4", the handsome pilot is an ideal subject for Hearst's cameras, always flying with a cigar clenched firmly between his teeth. On September 17th, 1911, he takes off from a park in New York. There's no such thing as an airport yet. As he heads west, a special train will follow, carrying his family, crew, spare parts, and an ample supply of Vin Fizz. Rogers finds his way across the state by following railroad tracks. Keeping his biplane under control requires brute strength and sharp reflexes. But the first leg of the trip goes like a charm. It's Chicago in 4 days, he says, if everything goes right. But on the second day, Rogers crashes, nose down, in a chicken coop while trying to dodge power lines. His plane rebuilt, he presses on. Then loses his way at a railway junction. Worse, the plane proves unstable on all but the calmest of days. And the fields used for landings and takeoffs are filled with hazards. But when the weather is good and he's back in the air, it's as if the mishaps never happened. Bells from fire stations call out crowds in every town he passes. By the time Rogers reaches Chicago, only 2 days remain to finish the trip. But prize or no prize, he promises, I mean to get there. As Rogers travels west, he's forced to fly blind through rainstorms. Wear on the engine is taking its toll. Spark plugs blow out in mid-flight. A cylinder seizes up. Four weeks and 4 crashes later, he arrives in Pasadena, California, where he's welcomed as a hero, even though the Pacific Ocean is still 20 miles away. The following Sunday, he sets out to reach the water's edge. Finally. And once again, there's trouble. This time, he suffers a concussion and internal injuries. One of his ankles is broken. But with crutches strapped to his plane, Rogers still makes the flight to Long Beach, lands on the sand, and wets his wheels in the surf. He's the first man to cross the continent by air, even if it has taken him 49 days. It's a victory of the spirit, widely celebrated, a dramatic demonstration that an individual's competitive spirit can capture a nation's imagination and bring a new technology to the forefront. In Europe, it's the political and military need for competitive advantage that has led to the growing interest in airplanes.
If you look at Europe before the First World War, you have really sophisticated flight laboratories popping up in one country after another. Even in nations like Russia, for example, you have major sites where really important aerodynamic research is being conducted. Again, in the German universities, wing theory is being born, for heaven's sakes.
In August 1914, the First World War finally erupts. As troops battle on the ground, no one is sure how to use the new airplane. At first, aviators gather the kind of information every general needs to know. What's going on over the next hill? Targets spotted from the air can then be pounded by ground artillery. Vulnerability from the air helps change the conduct of the war. Any forward advance can now be detected. So most of the conflict is mired along 400 miles of trenches. The only true mobility is in the air, and aviators are determined to make the most of it.
The English and French pilots of the time are not really content just to fly and look. They are often public school boys, public school sportsmen, in fact. Last thing they plan to be is a taxi driver. They decide this war needs to be more interesting. I'm going to drop bombs, and let's see if I can't carry a machine gun.
A German innovation takes the machine gun a crucial step further, with a fixed-mount weapon synchronized to fire through the propeller. The agile one-man fighter develops into a distinct class of military aircraft. By 1917, aerial bombardment leads to yet another class, the heavy bomber. German planes are the first to carry the war beyond the battlefield. When they bomb London, there are few deaths, but it's a taste of things to come. When America enters the war in 1917, the airplane goes from a wonder to a necessity. But the U.S. designs are no longer competitive.
People ask why America, the home of the airplane, has fallen so very far behind the Europeans in only 6 years. Well, it's because of the investment that European governments have made in the technology, and the American government hasn't.
With the end of the war in 1918, there's no longer any compelling need for aircraft. Government contracts are canceled, and American manufacturers are left almost where they started. But there is no turning back. Future competition among nations, companies, and the flyers themselves will force ever greater improvements in airplane technology. It may take years to bring aviation to the general public, but there's no longer any question that those days will come. When we think of technology, we inevitably think of inventions like the airplane. But technology isn't just a clever device. It's everything that goes along with it and makes it possible. Take the newly invented automobile, for example. Good roads are needed for drivers to use, not to mention traffic lights and parking lots and road maps. New businesses have to service cars, like this garage, now charging 7 cents a gallon for gasoline. Must be inflation. Of course, this business wouldn't even exist without cars. Every part of a system of technology is dependent on all the others. The birth of an invention, like the automobile, is only the beginning. In the early years of the century, to own a car like this 1908 Packard, you need money to burn. You also need a trained mechanic to keep it running. Such a complex invention seems destined to remain an amusement for the rich, unless it becomes cheaper and more available. A man named Henry Ford says he knows how to do it. Ford treats work like play and has an uncommon gift for attracting talented engineers. He builds up a team which, though largely self-taught like himself, ranks among the finest automotive talent in Detroit. In an era when automobiles are handmade, expensive, and difficult to repair, they set out to design an inexpensive, reliable car. They know that the secret to success is simplifying the technology, creating a car that is easy to build and that the owner himself can maintain. The cars of competitors need more than 8,000 parts, but their car will have just 5,000. The Model T is a masterpiece. It's as tough as nails, handles almost any road, and is easy to maintain.
It's a perfect match for the situation in 1908, 1909, 1910. It hit it. It's not often, I think, that a design hits its environment perfectly, just boom, without any overlap and slippage, and this one did.
For owners, it's a love affair from the start. And for women, newfound independence. They call the car the Tin Lizzie and make it part of the family.
There was one fellow by the name of Tom Ford, and we used to go on picnics in Chicago in the open Model T. We ordinarily went to the park in the streetcar, but if Tom came by and we got into his car, oh boy, that was a big thrill. He put about 12 people in that. We thought he was way ahead of his time.
Demand is so high for the Model T that Ford can't build enough of them. By 1912, the Highland Park plant is turning out 78,000 cars, double the previous year, and still the orders are flooding in.
We're now talking a volume of production that no one has ever thought of in history. So if you're going to really turn out thousands and thousands of units, you've got to now get very fine-grained about how do you get these heavy, funny-shaped objects, the various subcomponents of a car. How do you get them to where you want them when you want them?
It's a time when efficiency experts are promoting plans for scientific management. But Henry Ford and his men have already laid out their plant so that materials flow in a logical sequence of fabrication. Then, in a brilliant stroke, they go one critical step further. They design special-purpose machine tools that require little or no skill to operate and can replace workers altogether. But one crucial bottleneck remains.
Getting the parts to fit is the joker in the deck. The trick of cutting metal so that it's the right shape is handled by manufacturers most of the time until about 1905 with files and vices at the end. So you have a skilled person who says, no, not quite right, put it in the vise, well, that's better, put it back on, try it, make sure. So it's called hand fitting and finishing. It takes a revolution in the strength of cutting tools so that you've got knives to cut metal, and the knives have to be strong enough that they don't keep wearing out. And then you can begin to say, all right, here's a box full of these things. No one has to finish these off. Just grab anyone out of the box, and it'll fit right on there the way it has to. Once you begin to have genuine interchangeable parts, then the concept of flow changes.
On April 1st, 1913, workers in the magneto assembly department are lined up next to a long platform. The foreman tells them to add one part to an assembly and push it to the next worker, then to repeat the same action. After some fine-tuning, productivity increases fourfold. Soon, there's an engine assembly line. Then, one for transmissions. Eventually, a new problem arises. Parts are being made so fast that they overwhelm the final assembly of the car itself. As an experiment, a moving line is set up here as well. At first, a team of assemblers moves along with it. Then they take fixed positions, and the parts are delivered to them. All told, chassis assembly time falls from 12.5 hours to under 2. Between 1913 and 1914, production of the Model T nearly doubles. Assembly line technology will make possible the consumer society with its huge number of products, something we now take for granted. But for the men on the line, productivity has its price. The work is achingly hard and numbingly dull. By 1914, workers at Ford last on average only 4 months. The high rate of turnover threatens the production of cars. So, in a dramatic move, Ford doubles their wages to $5 a day, an unheard of amount for unskilled labor.
The moving assembly line cuts you up and spits you out. But people will put up with a lot if they're going to make double the money they were making before. You read letters of immigrants going back to the various old countries in Europe, and they'll say, this is very hard. And they don't just mean Fords. The work here is very hard, the life is very hard, but if I don't get injured and I don't get laid off, I'm making very good money.
It's more money than ever before. For some, it's enough to buy a Model T for themselves and their family. The car has a particularly strong impact on youth. It offers everything they might want and shouldn't have: independence, glamour, and danger. Nowhere is the car more popular than in Los Angeles, the first city to feel its effect.
You now could go your own way to any destination you had. You didn't have to depend on public transportation and wait for public transportation. The big thing, you didn't have to wait. It was your car and your transportation.
The car starts to change the way that cities develop. Now you can live almost anywhere, far from the downtown core. The car becomes the very symbol of freedom and independence.
In America, there is this concept of freedom, that you can reinvent yourself. You don't have to live in the same town as your parents. You don't have to live the same kind of life. You don't have to do the job that they had. You can go where your dream takes us. I think the first step in making that a mass dream is the coming of an inexpensive car that can, you want to leave where you are, you get in the car and drive.
Of all the technologies in the 20th century, the car will go the furthest in reshaping the way we live. Sometimes we don't even know what a technology is good for. It can take years to find out. A good example is radio. At first, around the turn of the century, all you can produce with a radio transmitter is a blast of radio waves created by an electric spark. You can see what the signal looks like on this oscilloscope. When these waves are switched off and on by a telegraph key, the result is wireless telegraphy. Radio is first used to transmit sound in 1906. That's when an American physicist generates a continuous wave signal, which he then modulates with sound. He tries it out on Christmas Eve along the Massachusetts coast. Wireless operators aboard ships at sea think they have heard a miracle when from among the Morse code beeps on their headphones, there emerges the sound of a violin playing Silent Night. In the early years, people assumed that radio will be used as a wireless version of the telephone, one-to-one communication between individuals. It's an appealing idea to anyone living beneath the ever-growing tangle of utility lines. If you want a radio, you have to build your own. The largest group using the new medium is amateur tinkerers, hams as they are called.
Often there were men who'd been in the war who learned about radio there, and they came home. They put vacuum tubes in their pockets as they left because there weren't any vacuum tubes available. And when they got home, after World War I, they started building radio sets with vacuum tubes.
In 1916, in Pittsburgh, an engineer named Frank Conrad sets up radio equipment made by his employer, Westinghouse. He talks with other operators about their mutual passion. Then, one day, he dips into his record collection and starts to play music for his friends over the air.
You gotta know how to love 'em.
With a 100-watt transmitter and an antenna the height of a phone pole, he can be heard in Ohio and West Virginia. When a Westinghouse executive named Harry Davis hears about Conrad's music, he has an inspiration. Davis realizes that radio can be a public medium.
You gotta know how to love. You gotta know.
A radio transmission can be broadcast to a large number of people. And if it broadcasts something they really want to hear, they're bound to buy radios made by Westinghouse. And so, in 1920, on the roof of the Westinghouse plant, the company's station KDKA goes on the air with one of the first radio broadcasts. When the station announces election returns before they can be read in the papers, it causes a sensation.
There was a sense that, like all technologies, I think, a sense that there were vast opportunities for human improvement. This would bring better communication. It would then bring people in closer contact with each other. They would understand each other better. The nation would be more unified. The world would be more unified.
Within 2 years, 100,000 radios have been sold, and 500 stations are on the air.
A kid next door had one. I couldn't believe I was hearing a voice from someplace, no telephone wires or anything. And it was great, and I used to go over and listen to music in his back porch to hear, come on, let me try him.
More and more companies set up their own stations as a good way to get free advertising.
We are broadcasting from the Texas offices of the Cook Paint and Varnish Company to say hello to all our friends.
They are joined by universities, churches, and clubs. Even newspapers begin to broadcast.
They weren't sure why sometimes, but it seemed like a good idea. You position yourself as hip, as technological, as cool. And so people started radio stations for that reason. They liked the feeling that they were in on the ground floor of this new technology. The problem was how to fill up these hours. So station managers would just pretty much take anyone who wandered in off the street and was willing to perform. They'd say, great, thanks, fill up time. How many numbers can you perform? We'll take everything. To get to hear your neighbors on the radio is fun. And in some ways, that was the favorite radio show.
Everybody in my childhood, like, maybe had a little crystal radio, and everybody spent a lot of time fussing with this little crystal radio, and you tried to get the farthest distant station possible without regard to what the content of the programs was that you were listening to.
W.O.S. Jefferson City, Missouri. The King of the Ivories will play his famous...
Gradually, the content of programs starts to attract an audience.
Say, Doc.
What is it, Bill?
Do you think I'll live to be 100 years old?
Well, I don't know. Let me see. Do you smoke?
No.
Do you drink?
No.
Do you stay out late at night?
No, sir.
Do you run around with the flappers?
I should say not.
Well, what in the world do you want to live to be 100 years old for?
When radio broadcasting began, it was incredibly varied. Lots of music, occasional dramas, lots of opera, some jazz, mostly whitened up. You don't want to have any African Americans on the radio because it's coming into people's homes. White people might not want black people in their homes, so black people were kept off the radio.
By the mid-20s, radios have speakers and plug into the wall.
Many of the early ads would have rooms that seemed to be glowing with a kind of misty aura that came from this kind of magical sense that something very ethereal and uplifting was coming to you in this magical way through the air.
But there are still problems to be solved. Distant stations often drift away as magically as they appear, or they're completely blocked by static. And there are difficulties with programming as well. Rich stations in big cities broadcast events like the 1924 Democratic Convention. But few other stations can afford such popular programming.
People would start these radio stations without any idea that programming costs a lot, and they started losing money. And so programmers, radio station owners started to say, this isn't working for me. It's okay to have our name in front of the public and to be cool, but not if I'm going to lose big bucks. So who pays for radio became a really big question.
If stations won't pay, then maybe advertisers will. But most advertisers are wary.
Two qualities really caught their attention about radio. One was the idea of its intimacy, and another was its intrusiveness, that it intruded directly into the center of the house, the center of the family. You were a guest in somebody else's living room. And there was this feeling of, on the one hand, isn't this wonderful that we can make this connection? And on the other hand, a kind of, dare we say anything that will offend them? Dare we mention our product?
Another problem is that advertisers can only reach one small pocket of listeners at a time. As a result, plans are made for a national system of broadcasting. If a signal is sent out over telephone lines to local stations across the country, the size of the audience increases dramatically. To hold such a large audience, the programming has to improve, which in turn should help to sell more radios. It's an idea that solves a lot of problems. And in 1926, the first radio network, the National Broadcasting Company, is formed. With a national audience, advertisers like the Michelin Tire Company start to pay for musical programs. There's nothing subtle about the costumes, but the only mention of the product is the name of the show, the Michelin Hour.
Palmolive had its stars, its leading tenor and soprano, change their names so that the soprano was given the name Olive Palmer, and the baritone was given the name Paul Oliver.
And for the next few minutes, you are going to be entertained by Rudy Vallee and his Connecticut Yankees.
But radio really becomes a commercially successful technology with the arrival of vaudeville stars.
They were perfect, and they had big names. People would tune in to listen to them. They knew they were famous. They were vaudeville stars. I think it's one of the ways that people came to accept these commercials is that these great entertainment talents took this material, integrated it into entertainment programming, and made it seem not so bad.
As the storm breaks around them, the sheriff's posse gathers at Pine Creek Forks.
By By the 1930s, the identity of radio is set.
All right, boys, let's hit out.
A technology that was supposed to replace the telephone has become something altogether unique.
Come on, men. We're gaining on them. They've seen us, Tom? Right, fellas. They probably have fresh horses at the creek.
When it comes to predicting the future of technology, it's best to assume you'll be wrong.
Hold up there. We'll set fire to the gap and stop. Whoa! Slim, you chop a couple of them small trees. Right. We'll spread a fire they can't get through.
As radio helps sell more and more mass-produced goods, like this refrigerator, there are more new goods to sell, thanks to another technological revolution. This one has to do with materials, what things are made of. In 1930, before the revolution, milk bottles are all made of glass. You can see through them to tell just how pure the milk is, but you do have to be careful when you put them down. They're heavy, too. This tennis racket is strong and it's flexible because it's made of white maple, but the wood isn't cheap. The tennis balls bounce just fine thanks to their Malaysian rubber, but Malaysia is awfully far away. In fact, this handkerchief is smooth and lightweight because it's made by silkworms in Japan. But in the 1930s, Japan is getting less friendly each year. All of these materials are natural, but all of them are relatively expensive or hard to get. Then, one day a chemist decides to find out just what gives these materials their desirable qualities. He wonders if it might even be possible to create something like them in a laboratory.
The story of the first purely synthetic material begins in 1927 at the DuPont Chemical Company in Wilmington, Delaware. DuPont has made a fortune transforming natural materials like wood into successful products like cellophane. But chemical director Charles Stein believes the company can do even better.
There was very little understanding of the fundamentals of what they were doing. They only knew that things worked because they worked. And Stein had a real belief that if you tried to understand at a more fundamental level what was going on, what's the chemistry that's going on in these processes, that they would inevitably be able to improve what they were doing.
Stein builds a new laboratory dedicated to pure research. He's unable to lure established chemists away from universities, so he turns to a promising young Harvard instructor named Wallace Carruthers. The deal is clinched when Stein assures Carruthers that he can pursue research of his own choosing. Carruthers is assigned a first-rate staff and given the best equipment that money can buy.
Carruthers' coworkers loved to be around him. He was not only their scientific leader, but he was the one who knew more about music, knew more about literature, who read the most. And it was a marvelous time.
Carruthers directs research into polymers, mysterious, long, stringy substances that give silk its smoothness and rubber its bounce. Scientists disagree about just what polymers are.
Carruthers wanted to show that these natural materials were just longer chain molecules. They weren't mysterious. They could be understood by principles already then known.
Carruthers sets out to prove his point by creating a polymer in a test tube. After a year, they're still trying.
And they seemed to stall. They seemed to be unable to reach beyond a certain chain length. They were very frustrated.
Carruthers, being a very good chemist that he was, did some thinking about why the chemical reaction might be stopping. One of the major reasons was that when you react an acid and an alcohol, you get water split out. And if that water starts to accumulate in the product, the chemical reaction will stop.
Carruthers directs his assistant, Julian Hill, to use this specially built still to extract the last water molecules interfering with the chemical reaction.
Julian Hill waited for days and days until he thought the chemical reaction was completed. And then at the end of this period of time, he broke open the apparatus carefully. He had a warm mass of resin, and he stuck into it a glass stirring rod. And then he pulled it out. And what he said was that I found I had a festoon of fibers. What a marvelous word, festoon of fibers.
This was a fiber that had enough strength to be a textile fiber like cotton or wool or silk. No one had ever done this before. I don't think it's hard to say whether anyone even thought it was possible.
Unfortunately, the fiber has no commercial value because it can't stand up to solvents or heat. But with the construction of polymers now understood, Carruthers considers his work complete. Commerce doesn't concern him. When DuPont's chemical director, Charles Stein, wins a promotion, his successor, James Bolton, decides that Carruthers must continue to work on a practical fiber.
Carruthers agonized about what he should be doing, whether he should follow his true interests in purely scientific work or whether he should try to do more practically oriented work and please his superiors.
Carruthers has also struggled during much of his life with bouts of depression. Now, these feelings return, and he begins to drink heavily. Some days, he doesn't show up for work at all.
One of his friends said that he knew that Carruthers had carried a small capsule of cyanide in his pocket all the time. No one ever saw him ready to use it. Nevertheless, it was well understood that he always carried the poison with him that he could eventually use to kill himself.
Bolton dealt with him very delicately. But it does seem that for some reason, in early 1934, Bolton was able to convince Carruthers to go back and take another look at the fiber problem.
In May 1934, Carruthers achieves a spectacular success, a strong, elastic fiber that survives well at high temperatures. Out of the thousands of names considered, they choose one: nylon.
Carruthers was by now the foremost polymer chemist in the world. But success did not help the man. Success made his problems worse in some ways. He felt tremendous pressure to duplicate his success.
But nylon will be his last breakthrough. Carruthers' condition continues to deteriorate. Neither friends nor professional therapy seem to make any difference. Finally, in the spring of 1937, he takes his own life, swallowing the pill of cyanide he has carried for years. Because of Carruthers' death, he never wins the Nobel Prize that many believe his work deserves.
Carruthers' discovery was really the turning point in the synthetic material revolution. Having